Parscale's name is in the spotlight for another reason. The British network Channel 4 News reports the Trump 2016 campaign allegedly tried to deter black voters from going to the polls. Parscale was the campaign's digital director at the time. For more, Jason Kint joins me now. He's the CEO of Digital Content Next, which is a trade association that represents digital content companies. Jason, thanks very much for being with us. Highlight some of the key findings for us. What have we learned about the Trump campaign's alleged operation?
Well, Elaine, we learned for the first time a big question that's always haunted us, which is how was this data possibly used during the election? We've known for some time that the Facebook data had been sold to Cambridge Analytica, and that's been well covered. But we didn't know really until this report that the data was being used to possibly suppress African-American voters and people of color. And the report actually took us inside of key swing states so that we could actually see how this could happen for the first time.
So Brad Parscale was the digital director for Donald Trump's campaign in 2016. Do we know what his role in all of this may have been and how his tactics may have been received at the time?
Well, at the time, it was controversial as soon as early reports came out that this was possibly what they had done. But interesting enough, when asked by House Intel and various press outlets, Parscale emphatically denied that they in any way targeted African-American voters on Facebook. And so now we have reports and evidence that some 200 million registered voters had been sliced and diced in this database down to thousands of fields. And messaging was used to actually keep them from voting, which is really, at the end of the day, the antithesis of democracy, that, ultimately you want to get people out to vote regardless of how they might vote. And this was a tactic to prevent them from voting or to keep them away from voting. And, as the report documented, there was a significant decline in voting in one key state, Wisconsin, where there was actually 19% decline in the turnout for African Americans. So this had real consequences, and it will have follow-up reporting, I'm certain.
And in an interview with 60 Minutes back in June of 2018, Parscale denied micro-targeting voters by race. How did he explain the campaign's strategy?
He explained it as the ability to have multiple messaging throughout the day and to do a very dynamic campaign, but he always denied that they actually had messaging that went specific to individual users based on certainly controversial means like targeting on race. And so he always dodged that exact tactic and other controversial tactics when he was questioned. And the other part that was also always dodged was Facebook's role in this. I mean, Facebook, at the end of the day, enabled this. It was the platform that was used. We all know that. And so as much as Facebook was what allowed the Trump campaign to go after and micro-target these specific individuals based on their race to deter them from voting, Facebook powered that. And so they're at the center of this controversy again, too.
So that was going to be my next question, because in a statement to Channel 4, Facebook said in part, quote, "We also have rules prohibiting voter suppression and are running the largest voter information campaign in American history." But this so-called deterrence project reportedly did profile 3.5 million Black Americans and also contained data on almost 200 million voters throughout the U.S. So based on that enormous amount of data, give us a sense of what Facebook's role was or may have been in all of this.
They're at the center of it. Let me be crystal clear. That statement from Facebook is a distraction from what's really happening. Google and Twitter, Facebook's two most significant competitors in this area, have banned this type of micro-targeting of political advertising. You can't do it on Google or Twitter at this point. Facebook has not made that change. And so this is still very possible. A third party like a Cambridge Analytica or a campaign can upload individual users into Facebook and use a very specific feature in order to target users based on the data that they have. And so they're at the center of a hornet's nest. They've been for a while, and the last few months there's been even further reporting that brings them to be the really most significant concern going into 2022. So they've had 4 years, and we're just as concerned.
Yes, a story that will no doubt continue. Jason Kint. Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.